Embracing my role as both a mother and a mentor has always been a cornerstone of my identity. Reflecting on the past, I recall the day my daughter introduced her future husband. He was everything a mother could hope for in a son-in-law: charming, respectful, and visibly devoted to her. From the very beginning, he seemed to fit seamlessly into the intricate puzzle of our family life, bringing joy not just to my daughter, but to everyone he encountered. Over the years, my appreciation for him grew as I witnessed their relationship blossom. He was supportive during times of trouble and celebrated our joys as if they were his own. His actions consistently reinforced the initial impression he made, solidifying my trust and affection towards him. This trust allowed me to feel secure in the knowledge that my daughter had found a partner who cherished her as much as I did. As time unfolded, our family gatherings became events I looked forward to, occasions where laughter was abundant and comfort was shared. Watching them together, the mutual respect and love they exhibited were always reassuring to me, a confirmation of their flourishing life together. This harmony filled me with a profound sense of peace, knowing my daughter was in caring hands. Thus, it was against this backdrop of trust and family unity that recent events unrolled, casting a shadow over the bond I thought was unbreakable. The comfort and normalcy of our interactions have always been grounded in mutual respect and familial love, making the slightest shift in dynamics both noticeable and unsettling. Reflecting on the joyous years and the strong relationships we had built together, I found myself grappling with the complexities of the feelings and responsibilities that lay ahead, challenging the very perceptions I had long held dear. Celebrating milestones has always been a treasured tradition in our family, a time when everyone comes together to share in the joy of one another's company and accomplishments. My birthday was no exception, a festivity marked by the warm presence of close friends and relatives, the air filled with the familiar, comforting sounds of laughter and conversation. Everyone seemed immersed in the revelry, the room buzzing with anecdotes and updates, a tapestry of life stories interwoven with genuine affection. Amidst the cheerful chaos, it was natural for me to seek out my daughter and her husband, my heart always slightly more attuned to their presence. While my daughter was as animated as ever, her laughter ringing clear and true, I couldn't help but notice a stark contrast in her husband's behavior. Normally the life of the party, his jovial nature seemed subdued tonight, his smiles fewer, and his participation in conversations somewhat forced. Observing him from across the room, I saw a pensiveness in his eyes that was unusual. He seemed lost in thought, occasionally zoning out of the conversations around him. This shift was subtle, yet distinctly out of character for someone usually so engaged and outgoing. His quiet demeanor stood out against the backdrop of the lively gathering, sparking a twinge of concern in the depths of my maternal instinct. The festive atmosphere of the gathering, while usually enough to lift anyone's spirits, appeared to have no effect on his mood. His distraction was not just noticeable to me, but also to a few others who mentioned it in passing, wondering if perhaps he was not feeling well. It struck me then how integral he had become to our family dynamic, his energy a pillar on which many of our gatherings leaned. As the evening progressed, my mind returned to his subdued demeanor, crafting scenarios that could explain the change. Was it professional stress, or perhaps something he and my daughter were navigating privately? The uncertainty of it gnawed at me, prompting a resolve to find a moment to inquire discreetly, hoping to offer support if needed. His well-being was, after all, deeply intertwined with my daughter's happiness, and by extension, my own. During the quiet task of tidying up, an unexpected and unsettling moment occurred that left a lasting impression. As I reached for a dish, I felt an intense gaze upon me. Turning to find its source, I was surprised to see it was my son-in-law. His look was difficult to read, laden with an intensity that seemed out of place in the casual setting of our family home. This was not the affectionate, friendly demeanor I was accustomed to, but something deeper, more probing, almost out of character. At first I rationalized it as perhaps a moment of distraction on his part, his thoughts elsewhere, leading to what I perceived as an intense stare. The idea of him looking at me with anything but familial respect seemed implausible, something my mind could hardly entertain. Yet, the discomfort it stirred was palpable, a visceral reaction that I could not easily dismiss. In the moment, I chose to brush off the feeling, attributing it to the odd dynamics that sometimes arise in even the most normal situations. I joked lightly, attempting to dispel the awkwardness, watching for any sign from him that might explain his earlier expression. He chuckled, the sound a bit forced, and quickly shifted his gaze, engaging in small talk as if to cover the lapse. This brief exchange, though outwardly trivial, planted seeds of doubt about his perception of me. The incident lingered in my thoughts, a puzzling piece that didn't fit the image I had of him. His usual demeanor, which had always seemed so transparent and genuine, now felt like it might harbor undercurrents I had never detected. Reflecting on this, I felt a mix of confusion and concern. It was crucial to maintain the harmony and respect that had always defined our relationship, especially for my daughter's sake. Yet, acknowledging even the possibility of inappropriate feelings from him was distressing, challenging the very foundation on which we had built our family interactions. The remainder of the evening, I found myself more watchful, sensitive to his actions and words, seeking reassurance in the normalcy of his behavior. The need to understand that moment became a silent quest, not just to allay my discomfort, but to protect the close-knit family environment we all cherished. After the gathering, alone with my thoughts, the image of his unsettling gaze replayed in my mind. This moment, so out of character, sparked a flurry of questions with no easy answers. The more I pondered, the more I found myself grappling with a discomfort that refused to settle, an unease about what his intentions might have been. It was unlike anything I had felt before in our interactions, which had always been marked by mutual respect and familial affection. I considered discussing it with a friend for an outside perspective, but hesitated, wary of voicing suspicions that might paint him unfairly or escalate my concerns into something more troubling than a possibly misunderstood moment. This internal conflict was exasperating, as I prided myself on being someone who dealt with issues directly rather than letting them fester. The complexity of the situation lay in its potential to disrupt the harmonious family dynamic we had nurtured over the years. Such accusations, or even the hint of them, could unravel threads of trust that were woven into the fabric of our family life. The idea of casting aspersions on his character based on perhaps nothing more than an odd look felt reckless, yet the instinctual discomfort I felt was too visceral to ignore completely. I found myself at a crossroads, needing to decide whether to bury my feelings in hopes they were baseless or to confront them head-on in search of clarity. Each option carried its own set of risks and consequences, making the decision all the more daunting. The balance between my responsibility to my family and to my own peace of mind was delicate and difficult to navigate. As I wrestled with these thoughts, I realized that this moment of uncertainty was a test of my judgment and my values. It challenged me to find a way to address my discomfort without compromising the integrity of the relationships involved. I knew I needed to tread carefully, mindful that the path I chose could have lasting implications on the trust and openness that had always defined our family. As I mulled over the unsettling moment, a private conversation soon presented itself as an opportunity to gain insight without directly confronting the earlier discomfort. He approached me one afternoon, his demeanor reflecting a seriousness that immediately signaled his need to discuss something important. This was not uncommon. We had shared many discussions about various topics in the past, but this time, the context felt different given my recent apprehensions. He began talking about the pressures he was facing at work, describing challenges that were evidently weighing on him. His usual confident exterior was replaced by a vulnerability that allowed me to see a different side of him. As he continued, the conversation subtly shifted towards his marriage with my daughter. He expressed concerns about their recent interactions, hinting at a distance that had developed between them. It was a candid admission, that revealed cracks in the facade of their perfect relationship, something I hadn't fully realized. Listening to him, I felt a mix of compassion and caution. It was clear he was struggling, and my instinct was to offer support, to help him navigate through his marital issues with the hope of seeing them both happy. However, the memory of that look, the one that had sparked all my worries, lingered in the back of my mind, coloring my perception of his intentions. Despite this, I responded with encouragement and advice, focusing on the importance of open communication between him and my daughter. I suggested that perhaps a heartfelt conversation with her could help bridge any emotional gaps that had appeared. My words were careful, chosen to steer him towards solving issues directly with her rather than seeking comfort elsewhere, especially not from me. As he nodded in agreement, seeming to absorb my suggestions, I felt a tentative sense of relief. Perhaps my fears were just that. Fears, not substantiated by any real intent on his part. This conversation had offered him a vent for his frustrations and given me a glimpse into his personal struggles, which appeared to be genuine. Yet, even as we concluded our talk and he thanked me for my understanding, the unease didn't completely dissipate. I was left wondering about the delicate balance between being supportive and maintaining necessary boundaries. The encounter underscored the complexities of our evolving relationships, highlighting how essential it is to handle such situations with both empathy and firmness. His compliment, though perhaps intended as kind, crossed a boundary that made me uncomfortable. It was subtle, wrapped in the guise of gratitude for my listening ear, yet the way he noted my understanding nature, coupled with a lingering look, felt too personal, too intimate for a simple thank you. This was not the typical appreciation one might express to their spouse's parent. It carried an undertone that seemed to tread into territory reserved for more private, more romantic connections. This moment was pivotal, marking a shift in my perception of our relationship. Up until now, I had viewed our interactions as familial and supportive, underpinned by mutual respect for our roles within the family. His words, however, hinted at a possible misunderstanding or misalignment of intentions that needed addressing. The discomfort I felt was a mix of surprise and confusion. How should one respond in such a situation? Correcting him outright could lead to embarrassment or defensiveness, potentially complicating our family dynamic even further. Yet, letting it pass without comment could imply a tacit acceptance, possibly encouraging him to disregard the boundaries I valued. Navigating this delicate situation required tact. I chose my words carefully, emphasizing the familial nature of our relationship and my commitment to those boundaries. My response was designed to gently but firmly correct any misconceptions he might have harbored about the nature of our interactions. It was crucial to clear the air without causing unnecessary hurt or embarrassment. As I articulated these boundaries, I hoped to convey not just my discomfort, but also my intent to preserve the integrity of our family relations. It was a reminder to both of us about the importance of maintaining appropriate boundaries, a cornerstone for any healthy relationship within a family. This conversation, though uncomfortable, was necessary to ensure that our future interactions remained respectful and clear of ambiguity. Reflecting on this encounter later, I found myself analyzing every detail, every word exchanged. The balance between being approachable yet assertive had never felt so challenging to maintain. It was a reminder of the complexities involved in relationships that blend familial and in-law dynamics. Each interaction, a potential learning moment about boundaries, respect, and the nuances of human relationships. After the exchange, the quiet of the night gave me too much room to think, and my emotions ran high. His words echoed in my mind, a troubling reminder of the evening's complexity. The unexpected compliment had stirred a series of concerns that now seemed to swirl chaotically, each thought colliding with the next. The initial shock had faded, replaced by a gnawing sense of responsibility that weighed heavily on my shoulders. I pondered the implications of his actions, not just for myself, but for my daughter. My primary role was to support her, to ensure her happiness and well-being, and any threat to that intentional or not, was something I could not take lightly. The thought of her being hurt or betrayed by someone she trusted was unbearable. This situation placed me in a precarious position. There was the undeniable need to protect my daughter from potential heartache, yet the risk of causing unnecessary strife by misinterpreting his intentions loomed large. The balance between vigilance and overreaction felt impossibly delicate. The emotional turmoil extended beyond immediate family concerns. It challenged my sense of self and my ability to judge character. Had I been naive in my earlier assessments of him? Was I overreacting now? These questions haunted the quieter moments, feeding into a cycle of doubt and confusion that was difficult to break. Amidst these reflections, I resolved to keep a closer eye on the situation. Observing more keenly and gathering more context seemed the only reasonable approach that could lead to informed decisions. This vigilance was not about intrusion, but about ensuring the emotional safety of my daughter and maintaining the trust that formed the foundation of our family. Despite the resolve, a sense of unease persisted. The possibility that I might eventually have to confront my daughter with my concerns loomed as an uncomfortable but necessary backup plan. How to broach such a sensitive topic, how to frame my observations without sowing seeds of discord, was a script I found myself rehearsing in hypothetical conversations late into the night. As I lay in bed, the silence of the house seemed to amplify my worries. The weight of potential familial discord pressed down, a stark contrast to the usually comforting quiet. But beneath it all lay a steadfast determination to do right by my daughter, to navigate this complex web of emotions and responsibilities with as much grace and wisdom as I could muster. Deciding to speak with my daughter about the observations I had made was a decision that came with heavy responsibility. It wasn't merely about sharing concerns. It was about potentially altering her perception of her spouse, which could deeply affect her emotional state and their relationship. This was a burden laden with risks, and the weight of potentially being the bearer of bad news felt daunting. The need for such a conversation stemmed not from a desire to meddle, but from a place of protection and love. My role as her mother compelled me to safeguard her emotional well-being, even when it meant venturing into difficult, potentially painful discussions. The possibility that I might be wrong in my interpretations added an additional layer of complexity to the decision. Yet, the maternal instinct to protect was powerful, urging me to prioritize her right to know over the comfort of ignorance. Preparing for this conversation required careful consideration of how to present my observations without causing undue alarm. It was important to frame the discussion in a way that was both honest and sensitive, providing her with information while leaving room for her own judgment and feelings. I rehearsed my words, choosing them with the intent to convey concern without accusation, hoping to encourage a dialogue rather than a confrontation. I contemplated the timing, knowing that such a conversation needed a calm, private setting where she could feel free to express her emotions without restraint. The approach had to be gentle, allowing her to absorb the information without feeling overwhelmed. My goal was to initiate a reflection on her relationship dynamics, perhaps pointing out changes she might not have noticed, offering a perspective that was external yet deeply invested in her happiness. As I mulled over these considerations, the significance of my role as her confidant and advisor was clearer than ever. This wasn't just about a potentially wayward gaze at a family gathering. It was about ensuring that she lived in a relationship defined by mutual respect and transparency. The upcoming conversation would test the strength of our bond, challenging us to navigate through possibly turbulent waters, with the hope of emerging stronger and more connected on the other side. The thought of this made me both nervous and resolute, ready to stand by her as both a guide and a pillar of support. The emotional weight of the discussion with my daughter was palpable as I gently broached the subject that had been pressing heavily on my mind. The careful choice of words and the soft tone were crucial as I aimed to navigate this delicate situation with the sensitivity it demanded. It was about expressing my observations without casting undue aspersions, about sharing my concerns without asserting them as unequivocal truths. Her initial reaction was a mix of surprise and defense. a natural response given the nature of the conversation. As I outlined my concerns, emphasizing that they were coming from a place of love and protection, I watched her closely, trying to gauge her emotional response beyond the words. It was clear that the information was difficult to process, perhaps conflicting with her own perceptions or revealing things she might have sensed but not acknowledged. The discussion required me to tread carefully, balancing my role as her mother with respect for her autonomy in her relationship. I reiterated that my intention was not to sow discord, but to ensure she was aware and attentive to dynamics in her marriage that might be cause for concern. I encouraged her to look at the situation objectively, to consider my words as one piece of a larger puzzle she needed to assemble herself. Her reaction was complex, a mixture of contemplation and mild upset, indicating the inner turmoil the conversation had sparked. She was understandably protective of her relationship, yet the seeds of doubt seemed to have been planted, prompting her to think more deeply about recent interactions with her husband. As the conversation drew to a close, I felt a profound sadness for the discomfort I had caused her, but stood by the necessity of the discussion. It was a moment that tested the strength of our bond, pushing us into uncharted waters where the roles of parent and adult child were redefined. I assured her of my unwavering support regardless of the outcome, reinforcing that my primary concern was her happiness and well-being. The aftermath of our talk left me with a sense of resolve mixed with apprehension. I had done what I believed was right, but the impact of that decision on her marriage and our relationship remained to be seen. It was a reminder of the complexities inherent in close family relationships, where love often means having difficult conversations and facing uncomfortable truths together. Reflecting on the conversation with my daughter brought a mixture of emotions. While I felt a burden had been lifted by sharing my concerns, there was also a lingering worry about the potential repercussions on her marriage. The uncertainty of whether I had made the right decision weighed heavily on me, casting a shadow of doubt over my intentions and the possible outcomes. In the quiet aftermath, I pondered the balance between intervention and overstepping, questioning the fine line between protective concern and unwarranted interference. The responsibility of being a parent to an adult child never diminishes. It merely changes form, requiring a recalibration of how to offer support without infringing on their autonomy. My resolve to stand by her, whatever the consequences, remained firm. I reassured myself that ensuring her emotional safety was paramount, even if it meant facing uncomfortable truths. The decision to speak up, despite the risk of causing temporary strain, was a testament to the depth of my maternal love, a love that prioritizes her long-term happiness over immediate comfort. As I processed these thoughts, I made a mental note to maintain a respectful distance from her husband moving forward. The importance of setting boundaries became clear, not only to protect the integrity of my relationship with my daughter, but also to prevent any misinterpretations in the future. My role as her mother was, as always, to be her steadfast ally, someone she could turn to in times of need without fear of judgment or recrimination. The days following our discussion were filled with a cautious optimism. I observed subtle changes in her demeanor, an indication that she was perhaps taking steps to address the issues we had discussed. It was a relief to see her taking control of her situation, making informed decisions based on her own judgments and the insights I had shared. This period of reflection reinforced my commitment to supporting her through life's challenges, reminding me of the strength and resilience that often emerge from facing difficult situations head-on. The journey of parenthood, fraught with worries and wonders, was an ongoing lesson in love, sacrifice, and the enduring bonds that hold a family together.